Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS. Quick recap of the weekend, and we'll start with the bad news. College football Saturday. So actually, things were looking okay around 7:30, 8 p.m. I was about even. I was actually slightly up on the day. USC was losing, but Colorado State was tied, and I was getting 14 and a half points, and they were tied in the third quarter. So I was like, all right, you know what? Kentucky's playing Tennessee close. I think UCLA is going to cover. I'm going to finish this day up. Colorado State somehow blows the cover in the snow. And then Cincinnati was tied. I was getting 7.5. They ended up getting blown out. Oregon State blows it. So I ended up having a terrible college football Saturday. That's the bad news. Now let's flip it over to the NFL and talk about the good news. It's been a great NFL week. I'm up, I think, 2.95 units or something on the week in NFL. Titans and Jags were two of my biggest bets of the year. So yeah, I had having a great NFL week. Let's finish it strong, though. We got Monday Night Football. Raiders on the road in Detroit. This line opened up. It looks like -4.5, but that was probably the look-ahead line. It's currently Lions -7.5. Total sitting at 47. Let's do it.
Welcome to the source. The source. Source. Hey, get the source.
So public is all over Detroit here. It's actually the most public play of the week. Line does drop from 8.5 to 7.5. So I know that looks like reverse line movement with everyone betting the Lions, but they added Amon-Ra St. Brown to the injury report yesterday afternoon with some kind of illness. So I think that's why the line dropped, or at least that had something to do with it. So yeah, we're looking at Detroit -7.5 with the public all over the Lions. So let's start with some injury reports, and I don't even need to pull up the Raiders offense because they're completely healthy. They're completely good to go on that side of the ball. On the defensive side, it looks like the Raiders are finally getting Nate Hobbs back at corner. He's been out since week 3. He's listed as questionable, but he hasn't missed a practice all week, so I think he'll be out there. They are going to be without Diablo, that inside linebacker they got, and that's significant. He hasn't missed a game all season, and he's second on the team in tackles and second on the team in tackles for loss after Max Crosby. So that's a bad piece to be missing, but it should be the only player out on the entire Raiders starting lineup. Now, the Lions are a completely different story. This team is wrecked with injuries right now. On the offensive side of the ball, they're going to be without guard Jonah Jackson again. He hasn't played since week 5. And by the way, the Lions offense really hasn't looked the same since he went down. They're also most likely going to be without their center, which is significant because the Lions' backup guard is also their backup center. So obviously he can't fill in both spots at the same time. So they're going to have to go another notch down on the depth chart to fill both those spots. And the right guard, Vitae, he might not even play. He participated in a couple late practices, though, so I think he's probably going to play. But the interior of this offensive line for the Lions is in trouble right here. As far as skill positions, David Montgomery's still out. He's been out the same length as Jonah Jackson. And like I said, Lions offense really hasn't looked the same since then. Also, Amon-Ra St. Brown may not even play. He wasn't on the injury report earlier in the week, but I just mentioned this earlier. They added him to the injury report on Sunday afternoon with an illness, so he might not even play either. Lions offense is dealing with some shit right now. On the defensive side of the ball, no new injuries for the Lions. Benito Jones participated in a full practice on Saturday, so he's most likely playing. Gardner Johnson, Mosley, and James Houston all still out, but they've been out for multiple weeks now. That's not news. So let's break these two teams down on the field, and we got to start with the dramatic change we've seen in offensive production from the Lions since Montgomery and Jonah Jackson went down. Through 5 games, the Lions were averaging 29.6 points per game, over 34 rushing attempts a game, and over 140 rushing yards per game. In the last 2 games without those two guys, just 13 points a game, 15 carries for 65 rushing yards. The question we need to ask, was it just their opponents? I mean, in the Ravens game, they were getting completely blown out. They had to abandon the run game early. Not to mention Baltimore's defense is just insane to try to run the ball on. So I'll give them a pass for the Ravens game, but last week against Tampa, 22 carries for just 40 yards, 1.8 yards per carry. This one concerns me a little because they were winning that entire game. So you know they would have loved to run the ball in that one, and it just wasn't there at all without Montgomery and Jackson on the field. And the Bucs defense is good against the run, but it's not great. They're 12th in yards per carry, allowed 11th in rushing DVOA. It's a decent run defense, solid, but not good enough for the Lions to get an excuse for those kind of numbers. So that brings us to this matchup. They play a Raiders defense that has not done a good job defending the run. Raiders are just 21st in yards per carry allowed, 28th in DVOA, 30th in adjusted line yards. So we're going to find out. Is this Lions rushing attack broken without Montgomery and Jonah Jackson on the field? Or was it just a pair of tough road games and Gibbs should be able to get it going on the ground against a weak Raiders run defense? Usually whenever I have a question like that, the answer is somewhere in the middle. So I expect the Lions rushing attack to definitely be better than it has been the last 2 weeks, but I don't think we can hang our hats on an explosive run game from the Lions here based on what we've seen recently without those two guys. The reason that's important, teams haven't really had much success throwing the ball in the Raiders recently. Now, I know Justin Herbert's really the only notable name on this list, but still, nobody's thrown for over 200 yards on the Raiders defense in over a month. Now, good news for Detroit is this game's being played at home at Ford Field, where Jared Goff's been good as hell. These home away splits this season, not quite as dramatic as they were last year. I mean, last year, Jared Goff at Ford Field was like the best quarterback in the NFL, and on the road, he was like a bottom 15 quarterback. This year, it's not quite as extreme as it was last year. He's actually thrown for more yards per game on the road than at home this year, but still, Jared Goff, an absolute beast at home this season as well as last year. I do have a couple concerns for Jared Goff with this matchup. First, we'll start with zone coverage. The Raiders run a lot of zone coverage. 63.4% of the Raiders' defensive snaps this year have been in zone. Jared Goff against man coverage, 4th in passer rating, 4th in net yards per attempt. Against zone, 29th and 23rd. And the other concern I have for the Lions on this side of the ball, Detroit hasn't had much competition in terms of a pass rush this year. Remember, Chris Jones didn't play in the Chiefs game, and even with Chris Jones, that pass rush is struggling. The strongest pass rush they've seen on the year is Seattle, who's sitting at just 12th in pressure rate. Raiders very well could be the strongest pass rush Detroit's seen so far this season, and they're coming into the game possibly missing 3 pieces of their offensive line. That's definitely something to take note of, and they run a lot of zone coverage, which Jared Goff has struggled against. Now, on the other side of the ball, the Raiders just have zero run game whatsoever. I mean, this is the worst rushing attack in the NFL, and I don't think it's close. They're dead last in yards per carry, dead last in DVOA, 30th in adjusted line yards. And the Lions have one of the best run defenses in the NFL. Yes, I know they got ran all over last week on the road at Baltimore, but look at these other games. Through 6 weeks, Detroit was allowing just 64.7 rush yards per game and 3.26 yards per carry. So I think we're safe to officially write that Ravens game off as an outlier in the data here as far as the Lions run defense. We can poke some holes in this Lions defense though. Remember, this is a secondary that was pretty bad last year. They brought in some guys in free agency to help that unit out, but they're all hurt. Well, a couple of them are hurt. Gardner Johnson out for the year. Mosley, I don't know if he's out for the year. He's out for a while though. This secondary is beatable. Lions defense against the pass isn't elite at all. 16th in yards per pass attempt allowed, 9th in DVOA, 16th in PFF coverage grade. And the Detroit pass rush is another unit that just might be a little overvalued. I mean, it's just not quite as good as people think. Hutchinson's a superstar, so people just assume that the Lions have this badass pass rush because they did in the second half of last season. But, I mean, it's good. It's not a bad pass rush, but remember, they lost James Houston to injury. He lines up on the other side of Hutchinson. And Detroit's just 17th in adjusted sack rate, 10th in pressure rate, 21st in PFF pass rush grade. Protecting the passer has been one of the Raiders' best offensive attributes. Maybe it's the best area of this whole offense. They've been great this year. They're 11th in adjusted sack rate allowed, 4th in pressure rate allowed, and 4th in PFF pass block grade. Jimmy Garoppolo should have time to throw, and like I mentioned, this Lions secondary is beatable. Without a run game, I doubt the Raiders' offense will do enough to win this game. But we're not asking who's going to win. We're asking who's going to cover the number. Before we get to my picks on the game, I do have an underdog. It's a 3-pick, so it pays out 6 times. Jimmy Garoppolo higher than 251.5 pass yards. Jared Goff lower than 264.5 pass yards. And Jahmyr Gibbs higher than 15.5 rush attempts. If you don't have an Underdog fantasy account, it's available in any state highlighted in this map. So if you're in one of these states, go to Underdog Fantasy, the website, or download the app. When you make your account, make sure you use the promo code BET. BET. That'll give you a deposit bonus match. So you deposit $100, they will give you a free $100 to play with. So as far as what I'm betting, oh man, you guys are going to hate this one. I'm going to get roasted in the comments for this one, but I'm taking the Raiders getting more than a touchdown against a Lions team that's dealing with a lot of injuries. And I actually like the way, as I mentioned throughout the video, I like the way this Raiders team matches up with Detroit. So, I mean, I won't be betting this one heavy because I'm not absolutely in love with the pick. I'm also probably not going to bet the Raiders money line. But Raiders at plus 7.5, I will take that. I won't be touching the total, though, because I actually like the over, but primetime unders have been cashing nonstop. I hit the under in the Bears-Chargers game last night, so I just don't feel comfortable taking an over in a primetime game right now. So give me Raiders plus 7.5. Won't be a huge bet, but that's where I'm at. If you want our top bets for all sports, parlay of the day, actually, it'll be a same game parlay, though, because it's Monday Night Football. you want to join our Discord, anything like that, head over to KyleKirms.com. The information is right there on the homepage. NFL Week 8 was a good one for us. Let's finish it out on a positive note. Remember to bet responsibly, and I'll talk to you in the Discord.